I am super excited and fingers crossed because we had some technical difficulties leading up to the show, but I'm more than happy, more than excited. This is a dream come true to bring in one of my real good friends, a guy that always had faith in me, and I am so excited to see his dreams come true. A guy that's been through the Valley and has promoted the Valley from, again, the time he was here until this very moment. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring in to you the voice of the Florida Panthers, the Douglas Plagens. Dougie, how are you, buddy?
Doing great. How are you, DJ?
Oh, better now that I can hear you, dude.
We got the technical situation sorted out. It's live. Anything can happen, obviously, but it's great to be here. And you hit it on the head right there. I'm excited every time I see a new YSN development, and I know everything that's been going on over the course of the years. I'm always keeping an eye on it, and really proud of what you've been able to build there.
Dougie, it has been a long time, man. You have done so much since your brief stint here in Youngstown, obviously with Channel 27 and 33. That's where we met. That's where our paths crossed. Also in the gym a lot, getting swole, as you always say. But tell us what has kind of happened to your career since you left the Valley, and obviously now you're going to be calling a Stanley Cup final with the Florida Panthers.
Well, I guess kind of reverse chronological order. Yeah, we've got the Stanley Cup final coming up, and that's because I'm in my 8th season as the radio play-by-play voice of the Florida Panthers in the National Hockey League. So that's been every bit the thrill and every bit the dream come true that I hoped it would be, to ultimately be a play-by-play announcer in the National Hockey League. That was that was something that I always wanted to do, and it was really a lifelong dream of mine. And to be able to achieve that and do it down here, it's been absolutely outstanding. But going back in time, this is my 8th season here. Before that, I did 4 seasons with the AHL's Lake Erie Monsters. Now they're the Cleveland Monsters, but the Lake Erie Monsters in Cleveland, part of the Cavs organization, and called 4 seasons of Cleveland Gladiators Arena football back then as well. So again, done a little bit of a few different things going back to my time there in the Valley, but met a lot of great people while I was there, worked with a lot of great people. And you were one of those, of course. And I'm glad we've been able to keep in touch. And like I said, I'm really excited every time I see something that you've got going. It's been great to see what you built there. But we're getting ready for the Stanley Cup final, which now we know starts. Well, we've known that it's potentially going to start on Saturday. There were 2 scenarios at first, but Stanley Cup final is going to start Saturday, 8 Eastern, and now we know who the Panthers' opponent is going to be, because last night the Western Conference final wrapped up. So it's going to be a trip out to Vegas to get this series going with the Panthers taking on the Vegas Golden Knights.
If today's Doug Plagens talked to Doug Plagens when he was a boy and all he dreamt about was calling games, in the NHL, and you got to say, hey, hang in there, you're going to be calling the Stanley Cup final one day, would you believe yourself?
I don't know that I would have or not. I mean, you think like there's only so many of these jobs to go around, and obviously that's what everybody wants to do if they enter this profession, is you hope that you can call the biggest games. And I always say I just hope people enjoy listening as much as we enjoy bringing the broadcast to everybody, because it's a thrill every time we get out there. And without the great games, the great players, obviously what these athletes do nowadays, it's just it's unbelievable. The level of skill and talent collectively across the league's never been higher. And it just, when you have great players and great games, it just makes the broadcast that much more special. But it's one of those things. Sometimes you do have to think back and, maybe even pinch yourself, remind yourself that it is real life. This is all really happening. And, like I said, even just from the perspective of being here, I work with a ton of people that have put a lot into this. And, you watch the people on the hockey side put a ton into it. You watch what the players do every single day. And a lot of people have a lot, obviously, invested in this in a number of different ways. And to be able to see the Panthers get to the NHL's biggest stage, it's a true thrill.
So, I mean, at any athlete's career, and obviously we're engaged towards the student athlete, but there's parents out there that get it, and they've had dreams that haven't come true. Maybe it's too late for them, maybe it's not. But you and I both know that there's times that challenge you along the way, right? It really touches your gut and says, do you really want to do this or do you not? What were some of those moments of adversity that you have faced that you thought, maybe this isn't for me, but you stuck it out and you got to ultimately where you go, you're going. And man, you're 4 games away from potentially hoisting up the Stanley Cup trophy.
Well, I try not to get too far ahead of myself because, but obviously that's something that everybody wants to do. Even those of us who aren't playing the games, we long for that opportunity. When you work, I always tell people, when you work for a team, the level of emotional investment that you have goes beyond anything that you could have ever comprehended before. But I think it's just going all the way back, and fortunately, I've never had too many crazy moments of doubt or anything like that really coming to mind. I think, like you, no matter what you're dealing with, you're obviously going to have certain things that come up along the way, but you're always going to you're always going to know that it's part of a long process. None of this happens overnight. None of your ultimate goals are achieved in one day. But just going back, I mean, my first job, I moved across the country to a place I'd never been to when I was 23 years old, and I realized that's not for everybody, and that can be tough for somebody. You move to a place where you don't know anybody, and you're going to meet people quickly, but you move someplace where you're not familiar with the surroundings. You don't know anybody. Early in your career, you could be living paycheck to paycheck at times, and there are things like there are just certain things like that come with being early in your journey or early in your career, knowing that when you do move someplace, yeah, you might like it, but you might know that it is going to be a stopping point. Whether it's that location geographically or that role professionally, or maybe both, it could just be a stop off. You might know that you're maybe more there for a good time, but not necessarily for a very, very long time. And you want to make the most of it everywhere that you go. So I think there's little things like that along the way. And I know, like, for me, there are also moments where you're on a bus coming back from who knows where in the middle of the night from a road trip, and you're getting home at 4:00 in the morning, or you're sitting on a bus and it's 3:00 in the morning. But at the same time, you sit there and you think, you know what, I just got to do what I really want to do earlier this evening. You called a game, you get on the bus and you head out of town with the team. And it might involve getting home at 4:00 in the morning. It might involve not getting much sleep. It might involve having a life where things aren't necessarily always going to be routine, and you might have to miss certain social functions and things like that because you're traveling, and for 6 months out of the year, your schedule is kind of determined by what the team does. But at the same time, you remind yourself it's what you always wanted to do, and those are just things that you learn to handle along the way, and it all ends up being well worth it.
All right, so you and I, neither one of us really get starstruck a lot, but there are those moments, right? And you're living it. Was there a time when you got to the NHL where you kind of had that out of body experience? Like, I can't believe this is actually happening to me, but you had to keep your cool.
I'm trying to think, because you start bumping into people who've accomplished a lot, put it that way, pretty quickly. And I know you've seen the same thing. You might just be sharing a press box with somebody that you've admired for a long time, or somebody who's, for lack of a better way to put it, extremely well known. Or you might come across, athletes who accomplished a ton, who are in some ways larger than life type of figures. I think the biggest thing for me, and you probably be about the same way, there are people on the air, broadcasters whose work that you've really admired, whether they're national people, whether they're regional people, voices of other teams, because nowadays, through all the different ways to watch and listen to games, we're able to watch and listen to so many out of market games, and we're able to watch so many different national games and things like that. And you meet some of these people, and I can tell you what's been really cool is meeting people that that I grew up listening to. For example, I'm from the Detroit area, so being able to be doing what I'm doing and bump into the Red Wings broadcasters. For example, Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond on the TV side, and Ken Cal and Paul Woods on the radio side. Those are guys who've been in their roles since the 1990s and earlier. So for me, those are guys whose voices I grew up with. I mean, I was listening to those guys, watching those guys when I was an elementary and middle school student. They're still doing it. And now I'm talking to them, and just, they're they're just a press box or a booth over in the press box, or a couple of booths over. And when you meet these guys who you've admired for so long, and they're outstanding people, and they sit and chat with you, it's a thrill, but it's also just it's a really cool experience. Guys, for example, some of the national people, I mean, over the years, like I said, I've been doing this 8 years now. So over the years, whether it's regular season games or playoff games, I've gotten to bump into and chat with Kenny Albert a lot. And he's just an outstanding guy. And it's really cool when you meet somebody whose work you've admired for so long, doing a bunch of different sports. And then when you get to chat with them in person, you're like, wow, this guy's outstanding on the air, but he's even a nicer guy. It's just those kind of experiences are really cool. And like I said, it's one of those things where you just you're thankful for it, and you're thankful that you get to bump into certain people and pick their brains. And I can say honestly, you go through everybody. The industry is full of very, very nice, very accommodating, very genuine people. It's been really cool.
So it's a little bit different now with this day and age, because you're not just a broadcaster anymore. It feels like you
Correct.
do a little bit more. Well, what are the things do you have to do? And I've seen you on Fanatics ads and Fanatics spots and doing stuff. What are the things are you doing, Doug, that people don't realize, that you just don't show up and do a broadcast and go home? Your job is a lot more than that. And you are helping yourself, hopefully financially, from a lot of different standpoints with what you can do.
Well, the Fanatic stuff, that's a side gig, and they're outstanding people, and I've gotten to work with a lot of people there, and like I said, they're outstanding people there, and they've given me some opportunities to kind of join my love for sports and broadcasting with memorabilia and sports cards and things like that, and put it all together. And they're they have a lot of what they do local right down here in South Florida, which is cool. So it works out, and that's been a lot of fun. But it is a different world now. You're still the broadcaster for a team. You're still the radio voice of a team. But like you alluded to, it's not like in the 80s and 90s where you're showing up, you're throwing a headset on, you're calling a game ends, you take the headset off and you leave, and nobody hears from you until the next time the game comes on. It's we truly do live in a multimedia world. And obviously, I know that people's consumption habits, as far as what they listen to, what they watch, that has changed over the years, and now people do have a lot of options and a lot of on-demand options and things like that. But live sports are still a big driver for viewing, and they're one of the things that people really do make appointment, or they take them into consideration as far as appointment viewing, appointment listening is concerned. You'll still have people as, okay, the game's at 7:30. Well, then I'm going to be at my couch. I'm going to have my laptop turned out, whatever you're consuming the game on. I'm going to be logged in at 7:29. So I'm ready at 7:30 when the game starts, and I don't miss a minute of it. So you still have that element of it, but you're doing the game. Obviously that's a big part of it, but you've got pre and post game responsibilities. We do, here at the Panthers, we do every game day. We have a quick we call it the 5-minute morning skate. It's basically a quick in podcast form. It's on all of our podcast channels, but it's where you can go to get, a few quotes from players and coaches, the matchup, the nuts and bolts of the matchup, the lines, if we have them for that day, where you can listen, where you can watch, stuff like that. If there's a watch party for the game, it's all listed there. So it's basically your one-stop 5-minute shop for where you can find everything about the game. We've got a weekly show we do here on radio. We've got a weekly podcast we do here as well. Plus it's in a social media world, whatever other content you can contribute, throughout the day. It's truly a 24/7, 365 type thing. You're not just on the air for the 82 games, and then when those are over with, you're done and see you later. So it's truly a multimedia world now, and that's part of the job responsibility. That's the world we live in. But the way I look at it, it's not more things to do. It's more opportunities to promote your product, get it out there, get the message out there, and make people as excited about the products as you are.
Couple more questions with the Valley legend, one of my best friends, Mr. Doug Plagens. I know that you've got other hits and you're taking time for us, so we greatly appreciate it. You talked about consumable content. I've probably consumed that call that you put out there on the way to the Stanley Cup probably 500 times, man. And people who don't know broadcasting or maybe don't dig in as much as we do, that is not only a dream come true, but there are moments in time that you kind of tuck away those calls for. How long have you had that call tucked away? How long did it take you to come up with it? Or did you come with it like on the fly as it was happening? Because you're not one of those guys. You are very superstitious when it comes to that stuff. When and where did you come up with that?
You're talking about for the game winner.
Yes, sir.
I would say first and foremost, I've never scripted a thing that I've used in a play-by-play broadcast. I've never scripted one thing. And you know, that's, some people have certain things that they want to use. Everybody's got their different style. I think that's part of the beauty of, you know, doing live sports broadcasts is, you know, you find your style that works and your style needs to be you. And you can let that reflect in the calls and things like that. But I'm a big believer that it's part of the beauty of sports. Every game, every time you go out to a game, doesn't matter what sport it is, doesn't matter what level it is, doesn't matter where it is. Every time you take in a sporting event, you might see something that you have never seen before. And therefore, we need to let every moment have its uniqueness. And I've always been a big organic guy as far as play-by-play is concerned. I want every moment to have its own feel, have its own uniqueness, because every moment truly is unique. So for me, it's just about being ready for that moment when it comes along. Here in this playoff run, we've had, you know, a good number of overtime games. We've had games we had the 4 overtime game that almost needed a 5th overtime. So we've had truly a little bit of everything throughout this playoff run for the Panthers. And it's been a lot of fun. We had a game 7 overtime. I mean, that's about as, you know, as crunch time as it gets. That was in round 1 when the Panthers played Boston. To get to overtime of game 7, they had to tie it with a minute left to force the game into overtime. And so you had a big play like that. And they clinched their first round series in overtime. Game 5 against Toronto in the second round, they clinched that series win in overtime on the road. And then the conference final, game 4 the other night, Matthew Tkachuk scored with just over 4 seconds left in regulation time. So it wasn't an overtime game, but it may as well have been, because there wasn't time for Carolina to do anything after that one. So, you know, we've been very fortunate. We've had a little bit of everything. The biggest thing with that game 4 overtime, or the game 4 winner for Matthew Tkachuk that wasn't in overtime, those first 2 series were clinched on the road. And I think that was valuable experience for any team going on a long playoff run to have those big moments on the road. But that game 4 game winner, Matthew Tkachuk scores a shade over 4 seconds left in regulation at home, to be able to share that with our home fans who've been there supporting us so much all season long. That was a huge thrill. And it just set up now, will partially set up this conference or Stanley Cup final matchup with that conference final win. So yeah, it's been, I guess that's a long way of saying I try to make every moment as unique and organic as it can be, because I think everything that happens truly is its own moment. That's part of the beauty of sports is you're going to see something different every time you watch a game.
Dude, what's funny is that I've crossed paths with a lot of anchors and a lot of guys in sports, and I always remember some of the things that you've taught me. Who's been, and this is the last question for you, who's been most influential in your career in getting you to where you are today that you'd love to shout out and just say thank you?
Well, I got to tell you, I work with a ton of people here who've been hugely instrumental for me, whether it's you know, Randy Moeller here at the Panthers and Steve Goldstein and my broadcast partner, Billy Lindsay, guys like that who've been involved with the Panthers for a long time, who've been outstanding to me from day one. So, I mean, they've been important. And, you know, going back to my time in Cleveland, a lot of great people that I worked with there at the Cavs. My boss there, you know, the VP of broadcasting at the Cavs, Dave Dombrowski, I still, every single day, I'm employing little things in my day that I learned from Dave. And He was an unbelievable resource while I was there. But I got to tell you, when I was an intern with the Syracuse Crunch in the American Hockey League in 07-08, the broadcaster for the Syracuse Crunch at the time was Bob McElligott, who is now the radio voice of the Columbus Blue Jackets and has been for over a decade now. But being able to shadow him throughout a whole season and, have him as a reference and have him as a mentor and to continue to have him as a friend who I see throughout the season and cross paths with, that's been a huge thrill. And, I got to tell, I can't put it this way. I can't, if when it's all said and done, I won't be able to tell the story of my career without mentioning what Bob meant to me early in my career, and the friend that he's been throughout everything. So he's been a huge mentor. And hey, for folks out there in your area, you probably have some people who do root for the Blue Jackets who probably listen to their games on the radio from time to time. And Bob McElligott, he does a great job. He's been there for a long time, and like I said, he was hugely influential to me, especially early in my career.
Dude, I can't thank you enough. You've been an inspiration, one of my good friends along the way. It's been fun to watch you. I root for whoever you're announcing for all but one time. And when you play the Penguins, that's the only time I don't root for the Panthers. But man, we're so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that Sarah said hi. She was so excited to see that we were connected for the interview today. Thanks for everything. You're a true inspiration, and I hope the people of the Valley are as proud of you as I am, man. Just keep kicking ass.
Well, I'm proud of you every single day. Like I said, I keep track of everything. It just means a ton to me. And like I said, I know when we got to work together, that was a huge thrill too. And I still think back to some of those times that we had. But yes, tell Sarah and everybody I said hello. Means the world to see everything that you guys have accomplished. And again, look forward to talking to you down the road. So thanks again for having me. And hey, thanks to everybody in the Valley for having me during that time I was there.
Dude, go win a freaking cup, huh?
Dude, I'm gonna try. It's gonna be really exciting. I hope everybody's tuned in. This is gonna be a heck of a matchup. You've got two very well coached teams, two very deep teams. You've got a lot of star power. You've got a lot of for new hockey fans getting introduced, a lot of American-born star power in this series too. There's going to be, you've got some great goaltending, a lot of things to be excited about with this Stanley Cup final. And every game starts at 8 Eastern, so it's easy in that regard. They're taking the guesswork out of the start times. 8 Eastern, that's when the games are all going to start throughout the Stanley Cup final.
We're proud of you, dude. Go get it. Thanks again for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Doug Plagens. I mean, I could go on and on. We could talk. Literally, we've done this right before. We go and talk for hours and hours and hours. So cutting it into 20, 25 minutes was a serious ordeal for us. So first off, you're welcome for us chipping away at that. But secondly, thanks to Doug, as always, for stopping by and for